love meeting new people. So much, in fact, that I've made a career of it. I've been in sales for 18 years, and I get to meet new people every day. I have a pretty good grasp on the general questions that people ask to get to know someone new. So I'm prepared with great responses to spark conversation. However, there is one standard question that catches me off guard every time. I've kept this response hidden away, even from those who know me best. The question, do you have any siblings? It's a fairly basic and simple question. Well, for me, this question is anything but simple. I struggle to tell the story, and I know I'm hiding a part of me by not sharing. So here's the long answer to a simple question. I was born on my brother's half birthday. We are exactly 9 years and 6 months apart to the day. No, I wasn't an accident. My brother is my half brother. So on my brother's half birthday, he got a half sister. Great present, right? I grew up not really understanding much of a difference between half and full siblings because my brother was my brother. There was one difference, and that was our last name. There were discussions about changing his name, but that seemed a little cruel. His last name was Ridgway, and my maiden name was Enos. Yes, rhymes with penis. My brother's first name, Cletus. Yeah, can you imagine naming a boy Cletus Enos? Regardless of a last name difference, I had no hesitation when people asked me if I had siblings. I was proud to respond that I did. However, being from a small town, people just knew who was related. In a small town, everyone knows everything about you. The positive stories traveled fast, and the negative stories traveled 10 times faster. If something bad happened, it was impressive how quickly the entire town knew the whole story, and even parts of the story that didn't happen. I started to understand this around the age of 6 years old. My brother was a sophomore in high school and was quickly changing from the admired high school athlete to the problem child. At first, he was caught drinking alcohol with his friends. Then it escalated to being in trouble with the cops. Alcohol led to drugs and more problems. He moved out of the house before he graduated high school. His reputation was severely tarnished, and he had no desire to try to fix it. My brother was a screw-up, and I was embarrassed to admit that I had a sibling. He was the bad boy who broke all the rules, and I never wanted to be like that. But his bad reputation followed me, no matter how hard I tried to be the perfect child. In high school, my English teacher made the connection. She had my brother during his infamous sophomore year. She asked if I was Cletus Ridgway's sister. I slowly answered yes. She had no words in response. She looked me up and down, and I felt her disappointment. Even though a decade had passed, it was guilt by association in her mind. It didn't matter that I was a straight-A student. She treated me like I was a delinquent who deserved to fail. It felt horrible, and I started to hate the question about siblings. So when I moved to Champaign, Urbana, only an hour away from my hometown, I felt like a new person without all the small-town baggage. However, of course, the question would come up as I met new people. Do you have any siblings? I would leave it as, yeah, an older brother, and pray they didn't interrogate me further. My half-truth answer is what got me through. I was scared of what would happen if he decided to show up in my new life. What would people think of me if they saw this shit show of a life my brother lived? The alcohol and drugs had escalated to violence, theft, and a rap sheet. It was more than a tarnished reputation at this point. He was a criminal. I hid my life from my brother. I begged my mom not to give him my address in fear he would show up high or drunk on my doorstep. He had abused many of the women in his life, and I didn't want to be next. I didn't want him to know about my job in fear he would start asking me for money. After stealing cash from friends and family members, I didn't want to be another target. I also didn't want my job to know that he existed. If they knew who he was, it would be guilt by association, just like high school. So when asked, I still kept my response simple. I have a much older brother that I don't see very often. It was a half-truth, and the hidden half was that I didn't see him very often because I didn't want to see him very often. I was with my mom when she got a call that my brother was in trouble, yet again. I was so mad. Here we go again, I thought. I just couldn't believe he couldn't get his life together. He was 34 years old, for Pete's sake. We drove to my brother's house to check on him. We figured that we would get the story straight from him instead of letting the local gossip train blow it out of proportion. I parked outside while my mom knocked on his door. A cop car pulled up next to me and asked what we were doing there. He informed us that they had cleared the area and needed us to move a few blocks away because there was a report that a man had a gun and was dangerous. As we drove to the recommended safe zone, I could see the officers discussing the suspect, and I felt like I was watching an episode of Cops through my windshield. I saw my brother's wanted sketch photo in their hands. I couldn't breathe. This was serious, and I knew he was going back to prison. I was so angry with my brother. This crap had happened so many times. I felt bad for my mom having to go through this yet again. And I started to worry how far this news would travel. Would it be on WCIA? Is this how people would find out? Since there was little we could do, I drove back home. The next morning, my phone rang as I was on my way to work. It was my mom, and I answered with an enthusiastic, "Good morning." She simply replied, "No, it's not." She told me that the police standoff finally ended. When the cops entered the house, they discovered that Cletus had already taken his own life. He had shot himself. My big brother was gone. My answer to the simple sibling question went from complicated to impossible. When people ask, they aren't expecting a long, complicated story, and no one is prepared to hear the words suicide and casual conversation. Being vulnerable is what makes us whole. Truly getting to know someone isn't about giving the easy answer. It's about the tough, complicated truth that I've been afraid to say. It has only taken me 40 years to really answer this simple question, and now I'm ready to share the whole truth about my half-brother.